Skyrizi and Rinvoq didn't just step out of Humira's shadow, they swallowed it whole and pushed the entire top line to almost $17 billion. Welcome to Earnings Unscripted, folks. It's July 31st, 2026, and we're unpacking a massive Q2 from AbbVie today, ticker ABBV. And honestly, Mero, this feels like they completely defied gravity. Earnings came in at $3.65 a share, which is a very comfortable beat. So how are they doing this while losing exclusivity on their historically biggest drug?
Well, they're doing it by, swapping one cash machine for two others. I was looking at their margins, and they managed a 48.3% adjusted operating margin this quarter. That's absurdly high for a company undergoing a major portfolio transition. They essentially squeezed the legacy Humira franchise for whatever's left and poured that capital right into the new immunology drugs. But the market isn't fully buying the victory lap today.
Right. The tape was actually super interesting. They'd been on this incredibly steady uptrend all spring and early summer. Just a beautiful chart. And then earnings drop, they gap down hard pre-market and finish the regular session in the red.
Which tells you everything you need to know about the fear of the unknown. They bought Apogee Therapeutics to build a bridge for their 2030 pipeline, but it's bringing short-term dilution and more interest expense. Wall Street doesn't like paying for future bridges when the toll is due today.
Since we're trying to read into the market's mind, I should probably toss in our legal padding right here. Everything we say about stock direction or market fears is strictly our own personal opinion, so please don't take it as financial advice. But yeah, you can totally see why traders might get slightly spooked by the debt. Still, those two big growth drugs, Rinvoq and Skyrizi, were up over 24% year over year. That's just wild for molecules of that size.
Sure, the immunology side is a machine right now, but look at oncology for a second. Imbruvica revenues fell 29% from last year, and management didn't even try to hide the cause. They straight up pointed to the Inflation Reduction Act, along with some competitive pressure. Policy is quite literally dictating the top line.
Okay, so that's exactly where my head is at. I want to look at the collateral damage from that legislation, but also there's this weird new European aesthetics toxin they just got approved that acts like a temporary preview for Botox. And I need to understand if a try before you buy model actually works in medicine.
Right, the SaaS model of aesthetic medicine. They just got approval in Europe and Canada for a temporary cosmetic toxin called Botai.
Wait, sorry, hold up. Why would you actually want an aesthetic drug that wears off faster? Aren't they selling convenience? Because if I have to go back to the clinic every month, I'm definitely just going to stick to the standard option.
Right, but you're thinking about this like a current patient. This isn't meant for the existing user base at all. It's a targeted pathway entirely for the fence sitters.
Oh, you mean the needle-hesitant crowd?
Exactly, because a standard injection lasts for months. If you're terrified your face is going to freeze into a permanent scowl, that's a massive barrier to entry. Botai acts as a short-duration preview. It kicks in fast and wears off in 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, I see it. That's basically a free trial. They're just lowering the commitment friction to get you in the chair.
Yep, it expands the total addressable market without eroding their premium pricing on the main product. It's actually a very elegant commercial strategy.
It's so smart. You know, it completely contrasts with how out of their hands the oncology side is right now. We flagged that steep Imbruvica decline earlier, and they outright blamed it the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, well, policy is essentially writing the revenue projections there. When the government starts negotiating and capping prices, you get these brutal top-line contractions, and they can't engineer their way out of that. That's precisely why they need entirely new growth pipelines immediately, which brings us back to the Apogee acquisition.
Right, the immunology deal. The CEO said something specific about that, bridging the gap for the next decade, didn't he?
He did. On the call, Rob Michael literally said, "This transaction is an excellent fit with our strategy to build and advance a compelling pipeline with new sources of growth to support AbbVie's performance in the 2030s and beyond."
Which sounds great for the 2030s, but they have to finance it today. And didn't I see they had to bump up their interest expense expectations to cover the borrowing?
By a cool $200 million just for this full year. Plus, they're absorbing roughly a 14-cent EPS hit strictly from the deal dilution.
Ouch. So you have this incredibly lucrative legacy transition working with Skyrizi and Rinvoq, but you're constantly fighting off these policy hits in oncology and borrowing heavily just to secure the future.
It's a heavy lift. And honestly, the clinical pipeline they're developing right now is wildly unconventional. Have you looked at the notes on their new neuropsychiatry drug, the Redisilicin asset?
Oh, the psychiatric pipeline stuff. Yes, I read the clinical tolerance notes on that.
The contrast with the broader industry is nuts. Some of the competitor psychedelic treatments are reportedly so intense that patients are losing consciousness right in the clinic.
That's honestly terrifying.
Absolutely. But AbbVie's chief scientific officer, Rupal Thakkar, drew a very sharp line on their version. He said, Bretisilocin is described as a visual and a rich experience. Some of these other assets that are being developed can be quite intense. Some observe loss of consciousness, where a patient becomes unresponsive. That's not something we have observed.
A visual and a rich experience. Sounds like marketing for a high-end spa, not a heavy psychiatric clinical trial.
Well, marketing matters, especially when your competitor's side effect is total unresponsiveness.
Wow. So they're juggling these massively distinct portfolios, temporary aesthetics, immunology, experimental psychiatry, all carrying completely different risk profiles. I just wonder how much sheer complexity this balance sheet can absorb before the operational execution starts to slip.
That's the reality of modern pharma, right? You have to run this incredibly complex Hydra-like machine because no single drug lasts forever. If they drop the ball on execution, yeah, the balance sheet feels the weight. But so far, they're managing it well. And management seems to agree because they just raised their full-year revenue outlook to roughly $67.6 billion.
Wow. Okay, so that underlying growth is just completely covering the Apogee acquisition costs we talked about earlier.
Exactly. They reaffirm the strength of the core business, setting the full-year EPS guide somewhere between $13.87 and $14.07. It's basically saying, yes, we bought a massive future pipeline, and no, it won't derail our current earnings.
Which is exactly what Wall Street wants to hear, but looking at the short term, like heading into next quarter, it can't just be smooth sailing. Didn't they flag some delays with the new Parkinson's drug launch?
Yeah, Tavapadin. They're warning investors to expect a fairly modest ramp at first. It's not a clinical failure. It's just the brutal bureaucracy of getting the drug added to Medicare formularies.
It's always the paperwork. You develop this incredible neuroscience breakthrough, and then you're stuck waiting on Washington to approve the billing code.
It's the ultimate bottleneck. But honestly, watching how they bridged the loss of their biggest cash cow over the last year, you have to give them some credit here.
Totally. It's a genuinely elegant turnaround. They proved there's life after a mega-blockbuster patent cliff, and they're pretty much writing the playbook on it right now. Anyway, I think that's the real takeaway for today. Survive the cliff, buy the future, and offer a 2-week Botox trial while you do it.
Great talking to you, Muzi.
Always a pleasure. Catch you next time. If this breakdown helped you sort through the pharma headlines today, maybe drop it in a chat for anyone else following the space. And just as a transparency note, this entire show and our voices are completely AI generated, which is how we're able to digest AbbVie's dense clinical updates and hit your feed on the exact same day. We'd love to hear what you want us to cover next, so send your ticker requests to earningsunscripted.datamadness.ca.
Thanks for listening.